The show begins with Seok, the protagonist, standing atop a tall building, armed with a rifle. From a distance, he spots a man on a blind date with his crush. It's clear that the man likes her, but he hesitates to confess his feelings. That's when Seok aims his rifle and shoots him right in the heart. The viewers are stunned, but nothing happens to the man because it's a love bullet. Seok then shoots the woman too. Suddenly, the two gain the courage to confess their love for each other and hug in front of everyone, leaving the onlookers confused by their behavior. After successfully completing his mission, Seok returns home, and we learn that he is a love angel who lost his wings 500 years ago. Now, he lives in human form with his 3 friends, who are just like him. One of them is cursed and turns into a dog. Seok is frustrated because his friends are lazy, and no one wants to clean the house. It's gotten so bad that the friend who turns into a dog even pees on the floor. They start arguing, each refusing to take responsibility, until finally, Seok gives in and cleans the house himself. It turns out Seok acts as their servant because he feels guilty for what happened to them long ago. We're shown a flashback from 500 years ago, when they were on a mission to shoot love arrows at a servant and a princess to bring them together in a beautiful love story. But Seok fell in love with the servant and stepped in to protect her, causing the mission to fail. As a result, they were all cursed, lost their wings, and turned into ordinary humans. They've concluded that the only way to break the curse is to shoot love arrows at people who struggle to confess their feelings until they regain their true forms. Back in the present, Seok continues to cook and serve his friends. He even takes the dog friend out for walks. Honestly, dear viewers, it's heartbreaking. Love can really mess you up, and poor Seok still carries the blame. That's the fate of a true lover. The next day, we meet our heroine, Baek, who works at an animal clinic. All her colleagues are jealous of her beauty, and anyone who sees her falls for her at first sight. But one of the nurses tells them that despite Baek's beauty, she's cursed. Anyone she likes or dates ends up getting hurt. She shares stories. The first boy Baek liked when they were kids ended up with a broken finger. The second was a classmate in middle school who got struck by lightning. The third was a university student who fell down the stairs and hit his head. And the fourth? He almost choked to death while eating. Thank God he survived. Since then, Baek has been afraid to fall for anyone or get into a relationship. Baek recalls a flashback from 3 years ago when she visited a fortune teller asking how to break the curse. The fortune teller told her she was cursed because of something she did 500 years ago in a past life. To break the curse, she must climb to the top of a mountain 1,000 times. In the final attempt, the curse will break, and she'll meet the person destined to love her. Back to the present. Our heroine is climbing the mountain for the 995th time. As she descends, she passes by the hero for the first time. She falls for him at first sight because he's incredibly handsome. She wants to get to know him but fears he'll get hurt because of her curse, so she forces herself to walk away. The hero then climbs the mountain, lost in memories from 500 years ago when he still had his wings. That night, the heroine returns to her apartment, where she lives with her friend. She tells her how happy she is. Only 5 more climbs, and the curse will be broken. Then, she'll finally meet her soulmate. The next day, the hero takes his friends out to lunch at an upscale restaurant that only allows in the rich and famous. We find out that the restaurant owner knows their secret. He personally serves them, covers their bills, and gives them anything they need. Flashbacks reveal that his grandfather, the original owner, knew the truth about them too. Before his grandfather passed, he made him promise to look after the hero and his friends, knowing they were love angels. The family owes their fortune to the angels' actions. Helping them has been a family duty for generations, passed down from his great-grandfather to his grandfather, and now to him. At first, the grandson didn't believe the story, but he decided to meet the hero to confirm it for himself. That's when the hero helped him marry the love of his life. Since then, he's been honoring his grandfather's promise. That night, as usual, the hero heads to the mountain. But on his way back, he finds a car blocking his vehicle. He can't move, so he goes into a nearby restaurant to ask whose car it is. Our heroine is inside, tipsy from too much lemon juice, completely out of it. As soon as she sees him, she stumbles toward him, slurring, "Babe!" and then faints in his arms. The hero is shocked and has no idea what just happened. The restaurant owner seizes the moment and demands that he pay her bill, saying, "If she's calling you babe, that means you two are in on this together. Pay up, darling, or I'm calling the cops." With no choice, he pays the bill and carries her to his car. But he doesn't know where she lives, so he decides to leave her at the police station until she sobers up. Later that night, the police discover the bodies of 2 girls buried in the mountain. They find out the girls have been missing for 30 years. Oh no, dear viewer, things are heating up. We were following a love story, but now we've stumbled into a mystery. The next day, the hero receives a call from the police. One of the bodies they found belongs to the girl he's been searching for, the only girl he ever loved. The hero is devastated. He rushes to the police station, where they show him her scarf. He remembers the last day he saw her. She was wearing that very scarf. That night, she had confessed her feelings to him and told him to meet her at the mountain. He waited all night, but she never showed. When he went to her house to check on her, he found her family in tears, searching for her. That's when he knew something terrible had happened. Back in the present, he goes with the police to the spot where her body was found. He collapses in grief, realizing her body had been buried on the mountain right beside him all these years, and he never knew. Meanwhile, the heroine wakes up at the police station with no memory of the night before. She heads back to the mountain restaurant to figure out what happened. The restaurant owner tells her, "Your boyfriend came, carried you out of here, and we haven't seen you since." The heroine is confused and tries to recall his face, but she just can't remember. She notices a girl sitting alone and joins her. The girl turns out to be a nurse, and she begins sharing the story of her own curse. They kept talking, and before they knew it, they'd completely warmed up to each other. They left the restaurant together, and that night, as usual, the heroine descended from the mountain. Snow was gently falling from the sky. She noticed a man abandoning his dog on the street and walking away. Feeling heartbroken, she took the dog with her and followed the man. The hero, seeing this, shot a love bullet at the man, making him fall in love with his dog so he'd never abandon it again. The next day, dear viewers, the heroine attended an art exhibition about love angels. By coincidence, the hero was there too. When they met, the hero was annoyed with her for making him pay for her drinks, while she was upset with him for leaving her at the police station. But when she found out he did it because he was worried about her, her opinion changed instantly. She thanked him, asked his name, and tried to get to know him, but he refused to shake her hand, saying he wasn't sociable, and walked away to stand at a distance. However, he was puzzled. He didn't see any love threads attached to her, which was strange because everyone else had them. The heroine noticed him staring intently at her and wondered if he had a crush on her. She walked up to him and warned, "You shouldn't fall for me. Anyone who loves me ends up getting hurt." But as she got closer, she caught a whiff of his scent and found herself captivated. She leaned in slightly, trying to smell him more. The hero grew nervous, locking eyes with her. He felt drawn to her, but she became embarrassed, apologized, and walked away, confused by his behavior. Later, the nurse who had been with the heroine at the restaurant disappeared, and the police launched an investigation. The restaurant owner recalled seeing someone following the nurse, and when the detective reviewed the security footage, he saw the hero threatening the dog's owner with a gun. The detective grew suspicious. Though the hero's face wasn't visible, little did he know he was on the wrong track. Eventually, it was discovered that the missing nurse was married, and unfortunately, she was unfaithful. The detective interrogated her lover, who admitted to meeting her the day she disappeared, but denied knowing her whereabouts. They'd had an argument because she was pregnant, and he'd left her on the roadside. But with no evidence against him, the detective decided to look into the hero. Meanwhile, the hero was driving, following the heroine out of curiosity. She was the only person he'd ever met without a love thread. Suddenly, the heroine received a call from the clinic. A dog had been in an accident and was in critical condition. She rushed there immediately, with the hero trailing behind, discovering she was a veterinarian. She managed to save the dog's life, then returned home. Now the hero knew her address, and he was desperate to figure out why she didn't have a love thread. That night, he dreamt of her approaching him, warning him not to fall in love with her. He woke up in a panic, only to find his friend, who was currently in his dog form, snuggled beside him. The next day, the detective tracked down the dog owner whom the hero had threatened. But to his surprise, the man said, "The gun wasn't even real. The guy was actually really nice. I'd love to meet him again to thank him. He saved my dog." The detective was baffled by this and finally realized the hero had nothing to do with the case. Meanwhile, the heroine kept thinking about the hero and the scent she'd noticed on him. She realized it was the smell of mulberry trees, a scent she'd loved as a child. Her friend teased, "You're definitely falling for him. He reminds you of happy memories." At that moment, the detective walked into the clinic. He was surprised to see that all the vets were men until he laid eyes on the heroine. Mesmerized by her beauty, he couldn't stop staring. He quickly took her number and waited his turn, clearly smitten. At the same time, the hero was still thinking about her. Using his friend's dog form as an excuse, he decided to visit the clinic. When the heroine saw him, she was thrilled, thinking it was fate bringing them together. She kept stealing glances at him, smiling to herself, but the hero grew annoyed seeing the clinic full of men. Watching her laugh with other customers made him jealous. Meanwhile, the detective was still waiting and noticed the hero. He focused on him, feeling competitive. The hero was shocked when he saw the detective. He recognized him as a prince from his past life 500 years ago. He remembered him clearly, but the detective was just staring because the hero was as handsome as he was and seemed like the only real competition in the room. Soon after, the heroine learned that the dog from the accident had died. She was heartbroken, not for the owner, but for the poor dog that now had no one. The detective saw an opportunity and offered to adopt the dog. But when the heroine learned he was single and a detective, she refused, thinking he wouldn't have time to care for the dog properly. The detective insisted he was responsible enough and asked her to give him a chance. "To prove it, I'll visit the dog every day," he promised. But, dear viewer, we both know he wasn't talking about the dog. The hero watched all this, burning with jealousy as the detective and heroine grew closer. When it was finally his turn, the heroine was excited to see him and even touched up her makeup to impress him. But he was frustrated, thinking she flirted with every man who came in. Without saying much, he left abruptly, leaving her confused. Meanwhile, a strange man entered the restaurant near the mountain. The restaurant owner recognized him immediately. He was the criminal who had kidnapped the nurse. Later, the detective received a report of a fire at the restaurant. When he arrived, he found the owner dead. Shortly after, he got another call. The second witness had also been killed. Back at the station, the detective discussed the case with his team. He couldn't believe both witnesses died on the same day. It couldn't be a coincidence. They realized the criminal must have killed them to cover his tracks. The detective grew anxious about the third witness, who had been with the nurse the day she disappeared. But he didn't know that person was the heroine. That night, the heroine was walking home, taking a shortcut through an isolated path. She sensed someone following her and, terrified, started to run, but she tripped and fell to the ground. The criminal approached, intending to harm her, but just in time, the hero arrived and saved her. He fought the criminal, knocking him to the ground and almost pulling off his cap to reveal his face. But suddenly, shards of glass began falling toward the heroine. The hero rushed to shield her with his body. The glass struck his head, but the criminal used the distraction to escape. The heroine was stunned by what the hero had done, but what shocked her even more was that he was completely unharmed. She was used to anyone who cared for her getting hurt. She moved closer to him, inspecting him carefully. "Wait, no broken ribs? No fractured arms? You're totally fine? Are you even human?" The hero reassured her he was okay. She was so overwhelmed with relief that she hugged him, thinking the curse had finally broken. But then she realized what she was doing. She quickly pulled back, thanked him for saving her life, and walked away. Later, she met her friend at the restaurant and told her everything that had happened. She thought the man who had chased her was just another obsessive admirer, so she hadn't reported it to the police. She admitted she hoped the hero would turn out to be her destined love, but her friend reminded her, "You've still got 5 climbs left. Don't forget, you need to go up that mountain and come down again. Then the curse will break." The next day, the heroine climbed the mountain again, praying, "Please, let the curse break. I'll accept any man you send me, as long as it's him. I don't want anyone else. I just want him." But when she descended, she was shocked to find that the restaurant had burned down and the owner was dead. The police were already investigating the cause of the fire. Afterward, the heroine returned to the clinic and called the hero, making up an excuse just to see him. She told him to bring his dog in for a free checkup, but the hero was still annoyed with her. He spoke coldly, then hung up, leaving her feeling embarrassed. She realized she might have been pushing herself on him. However, after a bit of hesitation, the hero decided to take his friend, still in dog form, and head to the clinic. At the same time, the detective showed up to check on his newly adopted dog. The hero grew irritated seeing the detective enter before him, especially when he caught them joking around together again. It made him jealous. When it was finally his turn, the heroine told him his dog needed more exercise to lose weight. The dog gave her a pitiful look, as if saying, "What do you think I am? Overweight or something?" As she spoke, the heroine noticed a scratch on the hero's face. She quickly grabbed the first aid kit and began treating the wound, her gentle touch making the hero both nervous and happy. Then, out of the blue, she said, "How about we grab dinner together?" The hero, of course, agreed instantly and invited her to the fancy restaurant he always went to with his friends. Her friend later advised her, "You need to pay for dinner yourself to show him you're serious and stop yourself from falling for him." The heroine agreed, without knowing she was walking straight into trouble. That evening, when she saw him, she was struck by how handsome he looked. "All right," she said confidently, "I'm treating you tonight. Order whatever you want and relax." The hero didn't need to be told twice. He started ordering everything on the menu. Literally, the heroine's eyes widened as she realized how expensive the food was. She thought to herself, "Did I really need to open my mouth like that?" But they started eating together, and the tension eased. During dinner, the hero asked her about her ideal type. She teased him, saying she once had a crush on one of her clinic's clients. The hero's jealousy was obvious, but she quickly added, "It was just professional, nothing more." After finishing the meal, the heroine nervously went to pay the bill, worried she wouldn't have enough to cover their feast. But to her surprise, the waiter told her the bill had already been settled. The hero had paid before she even got up. She stormed back to him, fuming. No, you're embarrassing me. I said I'd pay. Why would you do that? Do you think I can't handle it or what?" She left, upset, thinking he'd paid to distance himself from her. Both of them went home that night, frustrated. They liked each other, but each thought they'd been rejected. The next day, the heroine climbed the mountain, praying that the curse would break and the hero would fall for her. Meanwhile, the hero attended the funeral of his old lover. Guilt weighed heavily on him. He still hadn't found her killer. After the funeral, he went to the mountain, where he unexpectedly ran into the heroine as she was descending. She was surprised and delighted to see him. "Did my prayers just get answered?" she joked, running up to him and snapping a quick photo with her phone to keep his picture. The hero was taken aback by her boldness and tried to grab her phone to delete the photo. But in the scuffle, she tripped and accidentally fell into his arms. "Oh, what a move, director! Pure cinematic brilliance!" Embarrassed, the heroine invited him for a drink to apologize. He agreed, and they went to a nearby cafe, where the drinks loosened them up even more. The heroine finally opened up about her curse. She explained that she had to climb the mountain 1,000 times, and now she only had 3 left. After that, she was destined to meet her true love. She asked him why he seemed so closed off to love. The hero shared that he had loved someone long ago, even though he was warned it was dangerous. That person ended up seriously hurt. Ever since, he'd sworn off love. The heroine was moved by his story and felt a deep sympathy for him. Later, as they walked back to the car, they waited for the parking attendant to bring the keys. The hero noticed a mark on the attendant's hand, the same mark as the person who had attacked the heroine. The hero grabbed the attendant, ready to turn him over to the police. But the attendant broke down and confessed everything. He revealed who had ordered him to do it and led them straight to the culprit. It was the owner of the rival clinic across from the heroine's. The woman admitted she did it to scare the heroine away. Ever since the heroine opened her clinic, all the customers had stopped going to hers. She apologized, begging for forgiveness. The hero wanted to turn her in, but the heroine forgave her, feeling sorry for her instead. As they walked away, the hero asked about her life. The heroine revealed that she was an orphan. She was found as a baby on the doorstep of an orphanage and grew up there. The first boy I ever loved was a kid from the orphanage. He broke his finger just because I liked him, but I won't give up. I'll climb that mountain 1,000 times if that's what it takes to find my love and live happily ever after. The hero was touched by her story. And honestly, dear viewers, I'm getting emotional too. He dropped her off at home and they said their goodbyes. But that night, the hero's memories from 500 years ago began to flood back. He remembered how he and his friend had been love angels with wings. The hero was a prince among them, shooting love arrows to bring people together. There was a servant in the royal palace who often prayed, wishing to meet her soulmate. On her 1,000th prayer, she met the prince. At that moment, the servant realized she wanted him to become king because he was kind and handsome. The prince was overjoyed by her words and felt drawn to her. Seeing them together, the hero decided to shoot a love arrow at them. But just as he aimed, the servant smiled at him instead, making him nervous. His shot missed and struck himself in the heart instead. To his surprise, he had fallen in love with her. The next day, the king died, and the queen plotted to eliminate the prince so her son could take the throne. The servant overheard and rushed to warn the prince. But the guards saw her, and as they chased her into the forest, they shot her in the shoulder. She fell off a cliff. The hero wanted to save her, but his mentor appeared saying, "You can't interfere. A prince can't fall in love with a human." He ordered the hero to stay out of it. But the hero refused to listen, so his mentor imprisoned him. The mentor surrounded him with a ring of fire, but the hero endured the pain, forcing his way out until his wings burned away. Meanwhile, guards stormed the prince's palace to kill him. Suddenly, the detective snapped awake from his dream, confused. He didn't realize he had just dreamt of his past life as the prince. One of his team members walked in, telling him they'd found the address of the girl who was with the nurse on the day of her disappearance. The detective rushed to the address but accidentally entered the apartment of the heroine's neighbor. When he questioned her, she said she'd never been to the mountain. Frustrated, the detective realized he had the wrong person. Meanwhile, the heroine stepped out of her house and was shocked to see the hero waiting for her. He approached, placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "I'm the man you've been waiting for." The heroine's heart raced. She was thrilled, thinking he was finally about to confess his feelings. But he crushed her hopes when he added, "I'll set you up on a date until you find the right guy." The heroine stared at him in disbelief. "Could you please move your hand?" she said, annoyed. When he asked her about her ideal man, she snapped, "I want someone tall, broad-shouldered, handsome, a YouTuber even, someone who doesn't get hurt when glass falls on his head. You know, like you blockhead." But the hero just didn't get it at all. He promised to help her find someone who met her criteria. The heroine was furious. "God gave you everything except brains," she muttered as she stormed off, frustrated that he didn't realize how much she liked him. When she got home, she vented to her friend, who reassured her, "Maybe he's just pretending to be clueless to test you. I'm sure he'll come around and confess." And sure enough, the hero showed up later, and the heroine began to believe her friend was right. She asked him directly, "Are you trying to protect me, or did you find my soulmate yet?" The hero replied, I just don't want you to be alone. I want to see you happy." His words touched her deeply. "So, does that mean you like me?" she asked. Meanwhile, the detective realized he'd left his notebook at the witness's apartment. He went back to retrieve it, but when he arrived, he ran into her mother, who had come to visit. He asked her to grab the notebook, but when she entered the apartment, she found her daughter dead. Dear viewer, dead. The detective was shocked, realizing this case was way bigger than he had thought. The next day, the heroine went up the mountain, holding a photo of the hero in her hand. She prayed hard for the curse to break and for him to fall in love with her, but then she got a surprise. A message from the hero with a photo of a handsome young man. Not just one, though, a whole bunch of photos. "Here you go. Pick whoever you like," he joked. She rejected all of them. "Even if you sent me Tom Cruise himself, I'd still say no. I want you." Later, when she returned to her apartment, she saw ambulances and police cars outside. Her friend told her that their neighbor had died, but the detective wasn't convinced it was a natural death. He was certain it was murder. The hero saw the news on TV and was stunned to learn that all the witnesses connected to the case were turning up dead. He felt like the case mirrored the murder of his old lover, who had disappeared on a snowy day just like this. He suspected it might be the same killer, but wondered why the murderer had waited 30 years to strike again. Determined to find out, he decided to investigate on his own. He went to the house of the missing nurse, hoping to find clues, but her sister refused to let him in and kicked him out. Later, the detective returned to the station, only to find the hero waiting for him. The hero asked to speak with him, and once they sat down, he shared his theory about the murders from 30 years ago. He showed the detective photos of the 5 women who had been killed, all during winter, with snow falling. Then he dropped the bombshell. Each woman received a small red notebook the day before she died. Inside, each notebook contained one of the 7 deadly sins, like theft, lying, gossip, and greed. The hero explained that the nurse's case was tied to infidelity. She had been married but was having an affair. He pleaded with the detective to believe him and look for the killer. "I'm sure he still has 2 more murders planned to cover the sins of envy and gluttony," but the detective refused to believe him. "You're too young to know what happened 30 years ago." He told the hero to go home and stay out of police business. The hero left, hurt. His lover had been one of the victims, and he felt guilty for not avenging her death. He went to the mountain, thinking about her. As he descended, the heroine saw him and ran up to him. They went down together, and he offered to drive her home. Gathering her courage, the heroine finally decided to confess her feelings. "Look," she said, "I don't need you to find someone for me. I'm telling you straight. I like you. Give me a chance to be with you." But the hero was afraid she'd get hurt because of him, so he decided to break her heart. "I don't love you," he told her coldly. "I was just helping you because I felt sorry for you. You're an orphan and all alone." The heroine was devastated. She returned home, her heart shattered. She broke down, crying all night, remembering how he had saved her. Despite everything, she still loved him. Meanwhile, the hero felt terrible and couldn't sleep, his conscience heavy with guilt, but he had pushed her away because he feared she'd die like his previous lover. The next day, the heroine decided to climb the mountain for the 1,000th time, determined to break the curse. She was sure the hero loved her but was lying about it. As she climbed, she kept staring at his photo, unaware that someone was watching her. At the same time, the detective went to the clinic to check on his dog. While there, he noticed an employee with a distinctive shadow. After a quick conversation, he realized she had been with the heroine on the day the nurse disappeared. Suddenly, it clicked. The heroine was the missing witness they had been searching for. Realizing she was in danger, the detective rushed to find her. Meanwhile, the hero went to the clinic to apologize to the heroine, only to discover that she was the final witness in the nurse's case. Panicked, he sprinted toward the mountain to save her, but when he arrived, he was shocked to see his old mentor standing there. "You can't fall in love with a human," the mentor reminded him. Flashbacks from 500 years ago flooded the hero's mind. He remembered finding the servant girl he loved dead at the base of the mountain, but then it hit him. The mentor had been the one who killed her. The hero, consumed by rage, attacked his mentor to get revenge. But the mentor was too powerful. No matter how hard the hero tried, he couldn't land a single blow. Instead, he was the one getting hurt, his body covered in wounds. But then, the mentor revealed something shocking. The servant girl was still alive. Meanwhile, the heroine finally reached the top of the mountain for her 1000th climb. She sensed someone behind her and tripped, about to fall. But just in time, the detective arrived and saved her. The heroine, in shock, wondered if he was her destined soulmate. The detective drove her back and explained everything about the case and the missing nurse. "You're the last person who saw her," he told her. The heroine started to remember. She'd seen someone dressed in all black approaching her that day, but she couldn't recall his face because she'd been too tipsy from the lemon juice. When they arrived at the station, the heroine was surprised to find the hero waiting for her, worried about her safety. His body was covered in wounds from his fight with his mentor. She rushed to him, treating his injuries. The detective grew jealous, arguing with his colleague, convinced they were in a relationship. "She's just a doctor," his colleague laughed. "And besides, she's a vet. What do you think he is? A dog?" Just then, the district attorney entered. He recognized the hero immediately and spoke to him with great respect. "Oh wow, dear viewers. This must be some serious connection." The detectives were baffled. Why was the hero, who was younger than them, getting treated like a VIP? Assuming he must be from an influential family, they started treating him with the same respect. When it was time for the heroine to leave, both the hero and the detective argued over who would take her home. They finally let her decide. And guess what? She chose the hero. Yep, even after he had broken her heart and crushed her hopes. She still loved him. Is this a Bollywood drama or what? From heartbreak to obsession, it's all here. She took him back to the clinic to finish treating his wounds. He was worried about her safety and asked her to stay away from the case, but she refused. "I've got nothing to lose," she said. Her bravery impressed the hero, and he decided to stay by her side to protect her. The next day, he told his friends to take care of the house because he wouldn't be around much. Suddenly, their friend, still in dog form, ate some chocolate and got poisoned. They rushed him to the clinic. Pro tip, dear viewers, dogs can't eat chocolate, it's toxic. The heroine saved the dog and placed him in a cage for observation. She reassured the hero that he'd be fine, but she was surprised at how quickly the hero's wounds had healed. Nervous, he tried to change the subject and introduced her to his friends. But then, in the middle of the conversation, his dog friend transformed back into human form and walked out of the cage. The hero panicked, afraid their secret would be exposed. He quickly asked his friends to take the dog and leave, but the clinic nurse noticed the empty cage. She saw a dog outside that looked similar and assumed it was the same one. The hero, quick on his feet, said, "Nope, that's not my dog. Mine went home by himself. He's very well trained." Later, the detective kept thinking about the hero's claims regarding the murders from 30 years ago. He decided to investigate himself. After obtaining a search warrant, he went to the nurse's house. There, he found the red notebook with the word infidelity written inside. The detective realized the hero had been telling the truth. The two cases were connected. Returning to the station, he questioned the district attorney about the events from 30 years ago. The DA explained that two girls from the same school had disappeared while wearing identical clothes. The police searched everywhere and only found their clothing, but not the girls. Every witness they tracked down ended up dead. Eventually, they had to close the case due to a lack of evidence. But a year later, a young detective reopened the investigation. That detective was the hero, searching for his lost lover. He discovered the red notebooks, which always reached the victims a day before their deaths. The killer would send the notebook, asking victims to confess their sins. But the hero's lover had never received one, leading him to believe she died by mistake because she had been wearing the same clothes as her friend. The hero managed to track down the murderer but lost him at the last moment. The next day, the heroine left the clinic and found the hero waiting for her. He told her he'd be her personal bodyguard from now on. He followed her everywhere, even tasting her food and drinks before she did to ensure they weren't poisoned. The heroine was overjoyed by his attention. Even though he was glued to her side, she didn't mind. One day, while they were at a restaurant with her friend, the hero fed her friend a spoonful of food. Oh no, dear viewers, the heroine was burning with jealousy. She nearly smashed a plate over his head. To make it up to her, the hero fed her himself, and when she was too upset to walk, he carried her on his back all the way home. Ah, the romance, or should I say, romantic chaos. The next day, the detective summons her because he wants to put her under hypnosis to help her recall memories from the day of the incident. The heroine agrees, and when she falls asleep, she sees the criminal. She realizes that he was kidnapping the nurse, which makes her anxious and frightened. Just before waking up, she remembers a fragment of her past life. At that moment, she sees the detective as a prince, which surprises her. She wakes up confused. Later, the hero takes her home and wraps his scarf around her because it's cold. He also tells her that it will snow tomorrow, and that's when the murders usually happen. He makes her promise not to leave the house without him, which makes the heroine happy because she realizes he cares about her, so she agrees. The next day, she stays home, but her friend asks her to accompany her to the supermarket. She initially refuses, remembering her promise, but her friend convinces her by saying it won't take long. She waits for her outside the store, but suddenly hears a scream. Alarmed, she runs toward the source, but when her friend comes out, she finds the heroine missing and begins searching for her everywhere. Eventually, she follows the sound and finds the heroine treating an injured dog. Meanwhile, the hero rushes to her house to check on her, but when he doesn't find her there, he panics and heads straight to the clinic. He is relieved to find her but scolds her for leaving without him. He then drives her home, where her friend invites him in. As it gets late, her friend suggests that he stay the night. The hero is embarrassed but agrees, fearing something might happen if he leaves. They have dinner together, and her friend playfully teases him, asking if he likes the heroine. She keeps pressing him, asking if he has a crush on her or if he finds her attractive. Flustered, the hero insists that he doesn't love her or have any romantic feelings for her, swearing on his honor. He claims he is only by her side to protect her. This upsets the heroine, and her friend scolds her, saying, "He already said he doesn't love you. How much more do you want to humiliate yourself?" Since it's too late to leave, the hero sleeps in the heroine's room. She gives him clothes to change into and then leaves to sleep with her friend. That night, she dreams of a fortune teller who tells her she must accept her fate and love the man who held her hand on the mountain. Otherwise, she will die. She wakes up terrified. At the same time, the hero dreams about his past love, the one who was murdered. In the dream, she appears before him, telling him that he must regret how he treated her and that he never even confessed his feelings before she died. He is deeply affected by this and starts crying. The heroine enters his room to wake him up and finds him in tears. She sits beside him, watches him for a moment, then gently wipes his tears away. When the hero wakes up and sees her so close, he panics and covers his face out of embarrassment. He exclaims, "What did you do to me while I was sleeping? Are you some kind of witch?" The next morning, the police receive a report about a missing girl. The detective is shocked because he suspects she may be connected to the serial killer case. He rushes to the girl's house but finds no trace except for a red notebook. Meanwhile, the heroine heads to the clinic but accidentally bumps into a child, causing him to drop a card with the word death written on it. She immediately recalls her dream and the fortune teller's warning, filling her with fear. Later that day, the police discover that the missing girl was at the same supermarket where the heroine and her friend were the previous night. They call them in for questioning, and the hero insists on accompanying her. The detective grows suspicious of the hero's constant presence and asks why he is always with her. It is then revealed that he is actually her bodyguard. When the police ask the heroine what she remembers from that night, she says she saw the criminal's face but can't recall his features. However, she is certain she will recognize him if she sees him again. Meanwhile, one of the investigators reviews surveillance footage and discovers that the criminal was present at every location the heroine visited, but his face is never visible. Then, a shocking piece of news arrives. The missing girl's body has been found. Everyone is stunned, and the heroine becomes even more frightened, realizing that the killer is likely targeting her. The hero's friend urges her to stay away from the case, but she refuses. Determined to help the police, she agrees to undergo hypnosis again to remember the criminal's face. This time, she successfully recalls some of his features and provides a description to the authorities. Later, the hero drives her home as snow starts falling. The heroine is overjoyed and begins playing with the snowflakes. Seeing her, the hero is reminded of his late lover, who also loved the snow. The heroine then takes off her scarf and wraps it around his neck, saying that she has decided to embrace her fate and listen to her heart. She confesses her feelings, telling him she loves him, then walks away. The hero is deeply moved by her words. Afraid of losing her, he rushes after her and pulls her into a tight embrace. The heroine is startled by his action but feels a deep sense of security. Meanwhile, the criminal is seen in his hideout, where he has photos of all his victims, including the hero and the heroine. He has also kidnapped the detective's daughter and is closing in on her. The next day, the police release the sketch of the criminal based on the heroine's description. Suddenly, the hero bursts into the room, declaring that the image is inaccurate because the criminal is using a disguise, makeup, and a mask to alter his appearance. It is then revealed that the hero is the son of the lead detective who handled a similar case 30 years ago. From now on, he vows to assist in the investigation. A flashback takes us 30 years into the past, revealing that the hero was actually the detective leading the case at the time, while the current chief investigator was his young assistant. The investigators continued questioning people about the criminal. At one point, the hero saw a woman holding a red notebook with "The Sin of Disease" written on it. She told her friend that she had taken it from a madman. The hero realized that her life was in danger and started keeping an eye on her. That night, he saw the criminal attempting to kidnap her. The hero immediately attacked him, and they got into a fierce fight. However, the criminal managed to injure him and tried to escape. As he ran across the street, a car hit him, knocking him to the ground, unconscious. The hero approached, ready to capture him, but suddenly, something strange happened. The criminal's body transformed, and he was reborn into a new form. Taking advantage of the moment, he managed to escape. Back in the present, the detective was frustrated and uncomfortable with the hero's involvement in the case. However, his superior forced him to cooperate in order to catch the criminal. The detective reluctantly agreed and sat down with the hero, who revealed that the criminal wears a mask and alters his appearance to avoid being recognized. Meanwhile, the heroine was on her way home when she felt someone following her. As the figure got closer, she screamed and was ready to attack, only to realize he was a police officer assigned to protect her since the hero was at the station working on the case. She felt upset that the hero was away from her. When she got home, she told her friend about memories from her past life. She recalled that she was supposed to marry a prince, but another person interfered, stopping their wedding and triggering a war. She also remembered seeing her own wings and began to suspect that she had been an angel. Her friend, however, didn't believe her and said, "This must be the sin you committed, and now you're being punished for it." At the same time, the hero stood outside her apartment, secretly watching over her to make sure she was safe. When he finally returned home, his companion was waiting for him, warning him not to make the same mistake again and fall in love with a human. He reminded him that he must set up a romance between the heroine and Detective Sam so they could get married since it was their fate. However, the hero refused and walked away without responding. The next day, the heroine sent him a message asking him to meet her at the station. But the hero knew she was just making up excuses to see him, so he avoided her, trying not to weaken in front of her. Later, he discovered that the criminal's first victim had been the director of an orphanage. He and the detective went to speak with the orphanage's assistant, who revealed that the director had treated the children terribly. She then told the hero that he looked exactly like the detective who had worked on the case 30 years ago. The hero became tense, while the detective grew even more suspicious of him. When they returned to the station, the heroine was already there. The hero tried to avoid her, but she spotted him and pulled him outside to talk. She suspected that he was avoiding her because he was already married. Confronting him, she asked, "Why did you hug me the last time we met? What am I to you?" The hero grew flustered and told her that she was just a witness in the case and that he only wanted to reassure her. The heroine became frustrated, determined to make him jealous. Meanwhile, the detective received a photo from the case 30 years ago. He was shocked to see that the hero's appearance hadn't changed at all. Recalling what the orphanage assistant had said, he confirmed his suspicions. He went to question the hero, but was caught off guard by how kind the hero was to him. The heroine then asked the hero to take her home. He was happy to oblige. However, as they left, the detective watched them closely, feeling uneasy. He warned the heroine to stay away from the hero because he didn't trust him, but she refused to listen. That night, she kept messaging the hero, but he ignored her. Feeling heartbroken, she reflected on her memories with him and realized how much she missed him. She told her friend, "No matter how much I try, I can't stop thinking about him. Even if he turns out to be a criminal or a monster, I will still love him." Later that night, she sat alone, drinking and lost in thought. Suddenly, the detective appeared and sat with her. She noticed how similar he looked to the prince who appeared in her dreams and began to feel as though they were destined to be together. They drank together, growing closer. The hero saw them and wanted to stop them, but he restrained himself, not wanting to lose her. He realized that he loved her and that she loved him, but sadly, fate was not on their side. Afterward, the detective took her home since she was completely drunk and barely conscious. However, once he left, she suddenly woke up, stumbled out of the house, and called the hero. She threatened him, saying she was alone in the street and that if he didn't come to meet her, the criminal might kidnap her instead. Afraid for her safety, he had no choice but to go to her. The next morning, the heroine woke up without any memory of what had happened. She was shocked when her friend told her that the hero had brought her home. Stunned, she began to remember bits and pieces and realized that she had been hallucinating. She then told the hero that she had been a queen in her past life and that she had run away from him because of one reason. Sometimes, strangers can become lovers. Embarrassed by what had happened, she couldn't even face him. Meanwhile, the detective handed the hero's photograph to the forensic lab to confirm whether it was fake or real. The heroine goes for another hypnosis session, but this time she is shocked to see the memories of the hero's lover who died 30 years ago. Meanwhile, the hero is at the station and witnesses an argument between a married couple. The wife is angry after seeing her husband with another woman. The other woman mocks the wife, calling her fat and ugly, and confidently tells her that the husband will divorce her to marry her instead. The hero is moved by the wife's sadness and decides to help her. He goes to the rooftop and shoots an arrow of love at the husband. Instantly, the husband falls back in love with his wife, starts treating her kindly, and completely forgets about the other woman. The wife is overwhelmed with joy, hugs him tightly, and cries in relief. At the same time, the forensic lab sends its report back to the detective, confirming that the photo of the hero is real. The detective sees the hero holding a sniper rifle and immediately suspects that he is the criminal they've been searching for. He draws his gun and points it at him. Meanwhile, the heroine decides to visit the home of the hero's late lover. She meets the woman's mother and feels a strange familiarity with her, but she apologizes and leaves quickly. Back at the station, the detective questions the hero about the photograph. The hero claims that the man in the picture is his father, saying that they only look alike. To verify the hero's story, the detective checks the sniper rifle from the old case, only to discover that it isn't real. He reluctantly believes the hero, but still suspects him of being a stalker who spies on women from afar. Later, the detective meets with the husband of the missing nurse, who has been waiting at the station. The husband wants to meet the last person who saw his wife before she disappeared. However, the detective refuses, not wanting to put the heroine's life in danger. That evening, the police officer assigned to protect the heroine escorts her home safely. She keeps thinking about what she did while she was drunk, feeling embarrassed for throwing herself at the hero. Out of shame, she tries to avoid him. The next day, after finishing work at the clinic, she is surprised to see the missing nurse's husband waiting for her. He asks to talk, and she reluctantly agrees. He tells her that he saw her at the station and knows that she was the last person to speak with his wife. He asks her what his wife said before she disappeared. The heroine recalls the nurse telling her that she was sad because her husband was always busy and neglected her. Unfortunately, she ended up getting close to another man, but never had the heart to tell her husband because she didn't want to hurt him. The heroine leaves, lost in thought, only to be startled when she sees the hero walking behind her. He asks if the nurse's husband pressured her, and she feels happy that he's worried about her. As they walk together, she sees a couple standing nearby and suddenly remembers what happened the previous night. Feeling awkward, she quickly changes direction and leads the hero down another path. She apologizes for her behavior and tells him that she wasn't in her right mind. She then leaves and enters her house, feeling guilty. The hero stands outside her door, struggling with his emotions. He wants to tell her that he loves her and isn't upset with her, but he's afraid that if she gets too attached to him, she'll end up getting hurt. The next day at the station, everyone is shocked when the heroine walks in wearing bizarre clothes. She proudly announces that the criminal will now fear her and won't dare approach her again. She then takes them to a specific location, explaining that she sees the criminal kidnapping someone in her dreams. The detective is skeptical, thinking she's just imagining things, but the hero informs them that this is the exact place where the criminal kidnapped his father's lover 30 years ago. Suddenly, the heroine notices a pervert harassing a woman and immediately attacks him. She beats him up, making sure he regrets his actions. The hero laughs at her boldness and takes her to the house where his former lover once lived. There, he reminisces about his past. His lover used to make paper frogs. To his surprise, the heroine starts making the same paper frogs, just like his past lover. He begins to suspect that she might be her reincarnation, but still needs more proof. Meanwhile, the detective meets a neighbor from the area and learns that 30 years ago, 4 young men lived in that house. She mentions that one of them was exceptionally handsome, almost angelic in appearance. When she shows the detective a picture, he is shocked to see that it's the hero, with his dog, looking exactly the same as he does now. She then asks if the hero was ever married or had children, but she is certain that he was always single. The detective is stunned and realizes that the hero had been lying about his father. He has actually been alive for 30 years without aging. The detective storms into the house and grabs the heroine by the wrist, telling her that she must stay away from the hero. The hero recalls his mentor's warning that every time he falls in love with a human, she dies. Later, he sees the heroine sitting with the detective and decides to give in to his fate. He shoots a love arrow at them, but thankfully, it doesn't hit them, meaning that their love story isn't over yet. That night, the hero sits alone, feeling miserable. He visits his companion, who suddenly reveals, "By the way, I saw what happened between you and the heroine when I was in my dog form." The hero is shocked and embarrassed. His friend smirks and adds, "Don't try to deny it. She was drunk on lemon juice, but you looked ridiculously happy." Flustered, the hero warns, "If you tell anyone that I'm in love with her, I'll make you pay." His friend just laughs and replies, "I already know you love her. But the strange thing is that nothing bad has happened yet. Maybe she isn't human. Maybe she's an angel, just like us. At the same time, the detective examines the photo of the hero from 30 years ago, still unable to understand why he hasn't aged. Just then, a member of his team walks in and sees the photo. He remarks, "I saw a picture just like this at the restaurant, but it's even older, at least 100 years old." The detective initially assumed it was the hero's grandfather, but now he is completely shaken. He recalls a video he saw of the hero holding a gun and threatening the dog's owner. Slowly, all the clues start falling into place. Back to the hero, he is still deep in thought, recalling his friend's words. Could the heroine really be an angel? She is beautiful and kind, and he can't stop thinking about her. Determined to uncover the truth, the detective visits the restaurant to see the old photo for himself. But to his surprise, it's gone. It turns out that the restaurant owner had removed it. The detective immediately calls the hero and warns him, "Be careful. I know the truth, and I'm getting closer to proving it." At night, the heroine receives a message from the missing nurse, asking for help. Shocked, she immediately calls the detective and asks for the nurse's number. When he confirms that it's indeed her number, she doesn't tell him that she just received a call from her. Instead, she hangs up, gets in her car, and drives to the address mentioned in the message. The officer assigned to monitor her is distracted and doesn't notice that she has left. The detective grows concerned and asks his colleague to check the nurse's phone. He soon discovers that the phone was recently turned on and that a message had been sent from it to the heroine. Realizing that her life is in danger, he rushes to save her. Meanwhile, the heroine arrives at the location and is surprised that the detective is not there. He too finds out what happened and tries calling her, but she doesn't answer. As she calls out for the nurse, she is suddenly confronted by the criminal. Terrified, she attempts to flee, but he attacks and strangles her until she collapses to the ground. As he moves closer to finish her off, the sound of approaching police sirens scares him away. When the hero arrives, he sees a body covered up and assumes it's the heroine. Overcome with grief, he is relieved to discover that the victim is actually the nurse. He then learns that the heroine is still alive but in the hospital, undergoing surgery after hitting her head. While unconscious, she dreams about her past life from 500 years ago. To her shock, she realizes that she wasn't royalty as she once believed. She was merely a servant. Memories of the hero flood back, and she recalls how he always loved and protected her. The next day, she wakes up, and the doctor checks on her condition. However, she keeps talking about an angel who saved her, though she cannot see his face. The doctor assumes she is hallucinating due to the accident. Her friend tries to get her to eat, but she refuses, still shaken by what happened. Seeing this, the hero personally cooks her favorite food. She enjoys the taste, and his presence comforts her. He stays by her side until she falls asleep, where she dreams once more about her past. This time, she finally sees the angel's face. It's the hero. She wakes up in shock and upon seeing him before her, exclaims that she remembers everything. She tells him that she finally found the man she has been searching for all her life. At that moment, the detective visits the hero's house and meets his friends. To his amazement, they look exactly the same as they did 30 years ago, confirming his suspicion. They are not human. A flashback reveals the events of 500 years ago. The prince wanted to forcibly marry the servant girl, but she loved the hero instead. On the day of the wedding, the prince's enemies tried to kill her, but the hero arrived just in time to save her, taking the fatal strike in her place. Devastated, the servant girl decided to throw herself off a cliff, hoping to be reborn and reunite with the hero in a new life. He waited for her for centuries, and 30 years ago, she was finally reborn as the heroine. When she was in danger, he once again saved her, but he was always afraid of losing her again. On the day she confessed her love, he planned to meet her at the mountain, but the criminal kidnapped and killed her instead. Ever since that moment, he had been waiting for her to be reborn, unaware that she already had. Back in the present, the heroine regains consciousness and believes that she has finally fulfilled her destined dreams. However, the doctor insists that she is just imagining things due to the surgery. Meanwhile, the detective sits with the hero and questions him about a wound on his hand, noting that it healed unnaturally fast. He presses him for answers, but the hero, visibly uneasy, refuses to say anything and leaves. Suspicious, the detective secretly takes the hero's juice cup and decides to run a DNA test on it. Later, the heroine recalls that she managed to wound the criminal on his neck during the attack. She informs the detective, believing that the injury must have left a mark. The detective follows up on the lead and confirms that the nurse's boyfriend, the only suspect in the case, has a wound on his neck. With this evidence, they arrest him, revealing that he was the serial killer responsible for murdering the women. The victims' families, including the nurse's loved ones, are devastated and furious, wanting revenge. The results of the hero's DNA test come in, and the doctor is shocked. It turns out there is no record of him anywhere. This is an unprecedented case. The detective is stunned, realizing that the hero is not an ordinary human. At that moment, the hero is seen meeting with a hypnotist. The hypnotist tells the hero that he discovered the heroine is seeing the memories of his lover, who died 30 years ago. The hero is shocked by this revelation and takes the file from him. Later, as he reads through it, he is stunned to find that the heroine is recounting moments that happened between him and his deceased lover. She even loves the same things she did. It finally clicks. This is why he has always felt drawn to her. Now, he is sure that she was reborn in the heroine's body. Determined to see her, he rushes to her home, but her friend tells him she has gone to the mountain because she realized she had one last chance. When he calls out to her, she runs toward him and embraces him, confirming that he is indeed her lost love. The detective witnesses this moment, and memories of himself as a prince flood back. Overcome with jealousy, he watches in silence. The hero takes the heroine home, and she is overjoyed that he has finally confessed his feelings. Now that they are together, they decide to officially start their relationship and make up for all the time they spent apart. Later, the hero meets with the detective and firmly tells him that he loves the heroine and will never leave her again, no matter what. The detective gets angry because he knows the hero isn't human. He calls the heroine and warns her to stay away from him, claiming he is an alien. She, of course, doesn't believe him. "Alien? Are you serious?" She scoffs. The next day, the heroine waits for the hero outside her house, excited for their day together. He takes her to the orphanage where she grew up, bringing gifts for the children. They spend a joyful time playing with the kids, growing even closer. While talking to the orphanage director, the heroine learns something shocking. The hero looks exactly like the detective who handled a case 30 years ago. He is his son. Meanwhile, the hero is in the storage room when he finds an old document labeled "The 7 Deadly Sins." Shocked, he asks the director about it. She explains that it belonged to the former orphanage head who treated the children terribly. In fact, she forced them to write down their sins in red notebooks. Some tried to report her to the police, but before anything could be done, a fire broke out 30 years ago, and she supposedly died in it. The hero then visits the prison to meet the convicted criminal. He asks if he really killed the orphanage director. However, the man looks terrified and refuses to answer. The hero pieces it together. The real criminal is the orphanage director herself, who faked her death. The convicted man was just an orphan under her care, forced into aiding her crimes. Realizing that the heroine's life might be in danger, the hero rushes to save her. At that moment, the heroine is at the clinic when a mysterious man walks in. His face is hidden, and he is accompanied by a dog. The heroine is startled when she sees him. But don't worry, dear viewer, because at that moment, she sees familiar faces, her family from her past life. She feels an unexplainable connection to them. The dog is in critical condition, so the heroine performs surgery, managing to save its life. She reassures them that the dog will recover. It turns out that the detective met them on the way and brought them to the clinic. The hero finally arrives, anxious about the heroine's safety, but she assures him that she is fine. Then, the mysterious family members recognize the hero immediately. They were the family of his former lover. They stare at him in disbelief, noticing his uncanny resemblance to the detective who investigated their daughter's case 30 years ago. However, they soon realize their mistake, and the hero calms them with his words, convincing them to leave peacefully. But the detective remains suspicious. The tension between the hero and the detective escalates into an argument. The heroine, frustrated, begs them to stop fighting and just get along. But the detective refuses. He is convinced the hero is an alien. The next day, he returns to the police station and re-examines the old case files. He notices that witnesses described the murderer as a short man, but the one they arrested was tall. This leads him to conclude that the real culprit had an accomplice. Determined to uncover the truth, he decides to visit the hypnotist to recover memories of his own past life. The detective begins to see his past memories and realizes that he was once a prince. At the same time, the heroine visits the hero's old house and finds her rings, along with the paintings she had drawn in her past life. As she looks around, memories begin to flood back. When she steps outside, she is surprised to find that the hero has decorated the garden with the lights and flowers she loves. He now fully understands that she was his lover in their past life, and this time, he refuses to lose her again. He takes her to her family's home, though they don't recognize her as their daughter. Her mother, wanting to thank her for saving their dog, invites her to stay for dinner. Inside her old room, she sees pictures of herself with her childhood friends. Memories of her school days come rushing back, along with the painful realization that she died young. Overwhelmed, she breaks down in tears. During dinner, her family is happy to have her around. She asks them to consider her as their daughter and allow her to visit them whenever she can. The hero, deeply moved, feels sorry for her. She grew up in an orphanage, longing for a family. After dinner, he walks her home. The heroine thanks him, saying that she now sees him as her family and is grateful to have him in her life. Suddenly, his hand begins to glow. Strangely, the heroine reassures him, saying that she loves him regardless of what he is. She moves closer and kisses him. Meanwhile, the detective visits the hero's old house and finds the paintings that the heroine had drawn in her past life. He confronts the hero, demanding the truth. He shows him the drawings and asks if the girl in the paintings is the heroine. The hero finally gives in and tells him everything. The truth is that he was a prince, and the heroine was once a servant under him. However, he once tried to kill her. The detective is stunned by this revelation. The next morning, the heroine wakes up in a panic, fearing that the hero has disappeared. Unable to bear the thought of losing him, she calls him, and to her relief, he answers. He is still here. Elsewhere, the police discover a new victim's body. With it, they find a red notebook containing the words, "Sin of illness." The authorities interrogate the imprisoned criminal, but he refuses to talk. He appears extremely anxious, repeatedly saying that the prison is safer than the outside world. At that moment, something strange happens. The love arrow changes color to gold. Not only that, but the hero and his friends suddenly vanish, transforming back into angels. Meanwhile, one of the hero's friends secretly watches the heroine's best friend, as he has developed a crush on her. She, unaware of his presence, is lost in thought while sipping a lemon juice, feeling lonely. She heads to the park and sits on a swing, gently swaying by herself. The hero's friend, still invisible, begins to push the swing for her. She is puzzled, wondering how it is moving on its own. Just as she is about to fall, he catches her. Suddenly, the love arrow's color changes again, and the hero and his friends reappear. The heroine's best friend is startled when she finds herself in the hero's friend's arms, believing she must be hallucinating. At the same time, the hero reunites with the heroine. She is overjoyed to see him again and rushes into his arms. They decide to spend the day together. The next day, the heroine is at the clinic when the late nurse's husband suddenly walks in with his injured dog. The animal is in critical condition, and she immediately begins treatment to save it. Meanwhile, the detective enters the prisoner's cell, only to find that he is dead. Beside him is another red notebook, this time labeled Sin of Neighbor. Realizing the pattern, the detective knows that the heroine is now in grave danger. She is the last witness left alive. Back at the clinic, she is performing surgery on the dog when the nurse's husband suddenly approaches her. The moment she hears his voice and observes his behavior, memories resurface. She recognizes him as the criminal she once encountered. Fear grips her. Flashback. When he caught his wife cheating on him with her lover, he decided to kill her and frame her lover for the crime. It is then revealed that he was the one who murdered the prisoner in his cell. The truth clicks. He is the real killer. He slowly moves toward the heroine, but she gathers her courage. Acting calm, she pretends everything is fine and casually asks him to wait outside. However, she already knows something is off. Once outside, he contemplates how to get rid of her. After completing the surgery, the heroine confronts him. She tells him that the dog's injury was severe. It had been struck with a sharp object on the head, yet it didn't collapse immediately, contradicting his story. Visibly nervous, he lies, saying the dog had gone missing, and when he found it, it was already injured. He asks her to take good care of the animal and quickly leaves. Shortly after, the detective and the hero both arrive at the clinic at the same time, checking on the heroine. They immediately notice that something is off. She looks shaken and scared. She tells them that while she was operating on the dog, the nurse's husband came in, and now she is certain that he is the murderer. The heroine begins to suspect that the dog's owner was responsible for the injuries. Meanwhile, the detective informs the hero that the suspect they had arrested is dead. A red notebook was found beside him, proving that he wasn't the real murderer. Realizing they have no choice but to work together, the hero and the detective agree to cooperate. They begin searching every house in the city to track down the true culprit. Later, the hero returns home, where his friends inform him that he finally has a chance to stay with the heroine for good. But dear viewer, the catch is this: he must take an arrow to a specific part of his body to prevent his transformation. However, the success rate is extremely low. If it fails, the arrow might strike his heart, killing him instantly. None of his friends have the courage to take the risk for him. Meanwhile, the heroine visits the hypnotist, telling him that she is now ready to recover all of her past life memories. She hopes that by doing so, she will be able to recognize the killer's voice and help capture him. Since the murderer constantly wears masks and changes his appearance, identifying his voice is the only way. The hypnosis session begins, and she recalls what happened 30 years ago. She remembers the moment the murderer kidnapped her and finally recognizes his voice. It's him, the nurse's husband. Meanwhile, the hero's friend confesses everything to the heroine's best friend. To his surprise, she believes him. He then makes a request. He wants to go out with her every day until he fully transforms. He has loved her for a long time and always wanted to marry her, but now there's no time left. She agrees, and so they start going on dates, visiting different places and making beautiful memories together. For the first time in a long while, they are both genuinely happy. During this time, the hero desperately tries to delay his transformation. Suddenly, his mentor appears before him. "Kid, you're exhausting me. You still don't understand her worth, do you? You need to give up already. Just accept your fate." But the hero refuses to listen. "Listen to me. I refuse to transform. I will live as a human and spend whatever time I have left with her." But wait, why does his mentor's words sound like a warning? something feels off. Sensing danger, the hero immediately rushes to find her. At that moment, the heroine is at the police station, preparing to give her official testimony. She reports the murderer's identity, having recognized him by his voice. The detective puts her in his car to ensure her safety. While they're on the road, he receives a call from his team. They have found the murderer's hideout. However, inside the detective's car, there's a bomb. No one notices it. The hero desperately tries to call the heroine. He screams at her to get out of the car immediately, but her phone suddenly shuts off. And just as the countdown reaches 0, the bomb explodes. The car goes up in flames. Oh my God, what is happening? We cut to a flashback, rewinding to the day before the explosion. On this day, the hero took the heroine to a special place. The very place where they were supposed to meet 30 years ago, before she died. There, he finally confesses his love to her. He takes out a ring and proposes. Overwhelmed with joy, she says yes. Then, he tells her something important. He has found a way to stop his transformation, and so, he chooses to live as a human so they can stay together. Meanwhile, the hero's friend, who had transformed into a dog, also decides to take a risk. He must shoot the arrow at the hero himself. Gathering all his courage, he finally does it, terrified of the consequences. But dear viewer, he succeeds. The arrow lands in the right spot. Thank goodness. The hero regains consciousness, breaking free from his transformation cocoon. He screams in agony, fighting to save the heroine. Now, we return to the moment of the car explosion. The detective is left speechless when he sees the hero flying through the air, carrying the heroine in his arms. As he lands, he spots the murderer attempting to escape in a car. Leaving the heroine with the detective, the hero takes off in pursuit, determined to catch him. But the heroine is worried. His wings look strange. They have turned black. The murderer flees to an abandoned location, shaken by what he has just witnessed. Suddenly, the hero appears before him, hovering in the air. "I will avenge them," he says coldly. A fierce battle breaks out. The murderer stabs the hero in the stomach with a knife, inflicting a deep wound. Blood pours from the hero, but he endures the pain. With one final push, he shoves the murderer off the rooftop. As the murderer falls, he sees the spirits of all the people he had killed. Meanwhile, the heroine and the detective arrive at the scene, only to find the hero lying on the ground, gravely injured. She rushes to him, tears streaming down her face, begging him not to leave her. He reaches for her hand, and then he begins to fade away. Before her eyes, he vanishes. His friends disappear from the human world as well, returning as love angels. Days pass, and the heroine visits the hero's old house. She waters the plants, lost in memories of him. She misses him terribly and longs to see him again. Overcome with grief, she locks herself in her room, refusing to go to the clinic. The detective continues to visit her, leaving food with her best friend since she refuses to see him. One day, she finally steps outside to meet him. She tells him she's doing better and asks him to stop visiting. Hurt by her words, he agrees. He hugs her one last time before leaving. Determined to hold on to hope, the heroine returns to the mountain again and again. She prays for a miracle that her beloved will return. Years go by. She reaches her 999th visit to the mountain. With just one final attempt left, she climbs the mountain once more. She prays with all her heart, but nothing happens. Losing hope, she lowers her head in defeat. And then, a voice calls her name. She turns around, stunned. There he is. The hero stands before her. She rushes toward him, afraid it's just a dream. Tears well up in her eyes as she embraces him. He tells her that he has broken free from the transformation cocoon and lost his wings. He is no longer a love angel. He will stay with her, living the rest of his life as a human. From afar, his mentor watches with a smile, proud that the hero was able to change his fate, all because of love. Time passes. We see the hero and the heroine living happily together. They have a beautiful daughter. As she grows, they tell her the legendary story of the love angel who sacrificed his wings to stay with his human soulmate. One day, they gather with their loved ones at a restaurant. Together, they share laughter and joy. After 500 years, their love has finally triumphed, and with that, the drama comes to an end. Thanks for watching. If you love dramas like this, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss out on the best dramas. See you in the next recap.